My dear fellow Indians, this video is a humble attempt to propose a possible resolution to the Babri Masjid Ram Mandir imbroglio that is halting the progress of the nation. Way back in 2013, through my book Khitab-e-Nau, I had attempted to propose a similar solution. But the situation has deteriorated so rapidly now that an urgent resolution of this conflict has become absolutely necessary. One might ask who I am. I would urge you instead to ask what I am saying. In order to find an early and an enduring resolution, we must allay the apprehensions of the parties involved. We must understand their angst. There would necessarily be some give and take. It should be fair to both the parties. It must be constitutionally valid. Overall, it must involve a brotherly spirit. Hindus have serious grievances which Muslims would do well to pay attention to. Hindus argue, for instance, that there can be several mosques, but there cannot be several birthplaces of Rama. There must be some connection with Ram's birthplace with Babri Masjid. After all, it was called Masjid-e-Janmasthan. Whose Janmasthan? Hindus have serious grievances, and Muslims would do well to consider them earnestly. Hindus argue, for instance, that there cannot be too many Ram's birthplaces. There can be only one, whereas there can be mosques here and there. They argue that Muslims can conveniently shift the Babri Masjid brick by brick. After all, didn't Caliph Omar actually move the mosque? In Muslim countries, don't they move the mosques for the purpose of easing the traffic or locating important structures? Progressive Muslim clergymen like Maulana Sulaiman Nadwi, perhaps Maulana Wahiduddin Khan, have vociferously argued in favor of moving the Babri Masjid. You might ask for proof. Proof of what? Can we prove angels and jinns, or Durga's hands, or Hanuman's tail? In matters of faith, reason doesn't work. Which is why businesses, much less nations, are run in the name of faith. Pakistan tried to do that, it failed. Islamization of Pakistan has nearly ruined that country completely. Hindus also argue that Muslims persecute their minorities, and they cite examples of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh. They also say that Muslims demand equality and justice when they are in minority. I appeal to Muslims to not only consider these arguments and grievances, but also to recognize that a section of our leadership lacks foresight and vision, a progressive, forward-looking outlook. While some of them are spineless and greedy, others tend to be far too aggressive, lacking all flexibility, missing the message of the compromise of Hudaybiyah or Sulh Hudaybiyah. The ground reality is that a Babri Masjid cannot be constructed at precisely that place, even if the Supreme Court were to award verdict in favor of the Muslims. At best, the Mandir can be delayed, and the longer the delay, the dirtier and the murkier the politics would get. The larger the distances between Muslims and Hindus, the greater would be the hurt to the cause of Muslims and their welfare in India. How much pressure can we expect the Muslims of Ayodhya to shoulder, and when will we return focus on Muslim empowerment, on nation building? Isn't it a fact that a vast majority of Hindus of India are our friends? They mean well for us. After all, who has been fighting the battle of justice for Muslims, whether it's Gujarat or Muzaffarnagar? What about that champion of Hindu-Muslim unity who laid his life for this cause, Mahatma Gandhi? What were the words on his lips when he breathed his last? Hey Ram. It is to the memory of this Ram that this Mandir is sought to be constructed. Shan't we do some Gandhigiri? May I now convey the Muslims' grievances and urge Hindus to consider them seriously. Muslims argue that no credible, authentic evidence has been found of a mandir being demolished at this place. Indeed, of the 400 odd years of its existence, in the first 250 years, there has never been a conflict. In fact, Vishnu Smriti and Ramcharitramanas, written in late 16th or early 17th century, do not even make a mention of this. Of course, Muslims did destroy many a mandir. For that matter, several rulers of the past demolished the places of worship of the people of other faith. It was a kind of expression of power. Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Jains, all of them have done so. If Hindus did not demolish Muslim mosques, that was because Hindus did not rule India after the Muslim rule. But didn't we turn a new page in our history in 1947 by setting up a republic and later by adopting a constitution and taking a pledge to abide by the rule of law? The story of partition is the story of two ideologies. One, a communal one that did not recognize that Hindus, Muslims and people of other faiths can coexist. People who believed in that ideology left India and went to Pakistan with their share of land. There was then the other ideology, the secular, the pluralistic ideology, which believed that Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians, all of them can live together in harmonious coexistence, choosing to abide by a constitution. People who subscribed to this school of thought stayed back in India. Muslims of India today, they stayed here with their share of land and resources. They are not our guests, much less encroachers. Muslims are often accused of transnational loyalties merely because they look up to Pakistan for some reasons. भैया, ये वफादारी नहीं, रिश्तेदारी की बात है. Yes, Muslims of India often look up to their relatives in Pakistan, much the same way as Hindus of Malaysia and Indonesia connect with people in India. They are not betraying their countries. Then there is that ironical bogey of appeasement of Muslims. Successive riots have confined Muslims to ghettos, which in turn are called mini Pakistan. All civic amenities are denied to them. Muslims are deprived of their fair share of bank credit, jobs, tenders, contracts. Muslims are virtually excluded from the nation's democratic processes. Politically, they stand excluded almost completely. Majoritarianism is giving way to constitutional, fair democracy. If Congress were to appease Muslims, Muslims wouldn't have come to face this fate. The gruesome riots of Assam, Bhagalpur, even Gujarat 1969 happened during Congress regimes. Various commissions of inquiry and studies conducted by the Government of India, such as the Gopal Singh Committee, Justice Rajendra Sachar Committee, Justice Ranganatha Mishra Commission of Inquiry, have established beyond doubt the abysmal condition in which Muslims have come to live. A community which once was a part of the ruling establishment for a good 8 to 10 centuries has come to occupy the lowest rung of our socio-economic strata. And yet it is required to prove its patriotism, Indianness, all the time. They ask the Hindus whether they are Hindus first or Indians first. Would they choose to abide by the scriptures or the constitution? Would they respect a Mandir or the Supreme Court more? Questions such as these are best avoided. In this conflict of religion versus nation, let's not lose sight of the fact that we opted for the second, pluralistic ideology, choosing to abide by a constitution and the rule of law. We are not out to make a Hindu Pakistan. Let's not repeat the mistake that General Zia-ul-Haq of Pakistan committed by Islamizing most of its institutions, impoverishing them. When institutional mechanisms collapse, nations disintegrate. We have the example of Germany. Bigotry and violence can destroy nations. Beginning with communalism, it becomes casteism, regionalism. It can also lead to class struggles. We already see various agitations such as the Gurjars, Marathas, Patels, Catholics and Protestants, Shias and Sunnis have fought for centuries, and there seems to be no end in sight. Isn't it time we question which way we are headed, towards the compassionate Ramarajya of Gandhi or towards a secular, socialist, constitutional republic of Nehru's dreams, or towards a fascist Germany or Iraq or Saddam Hussein, or fanatic regimes of ISIS or Taliban? Should we be comparing ourselves with Pakistan, Nepal? Look at China. I understand that the next Large Hadron Collider is going to be set up in China. Perhaps it is also launching a satellite mimicking the moon to lighten up one of its cities. Our perception as a nation, in the eyes of the world, is remarkably good on many parameters. But then there are very many disturbing trends. On several important indices, we are lagging behind, far behind. Here I am presenting a scrolling video with some disturbing indices. I am particularly worried about the state of science in India. We are lagging behind in cutting-edge sciences. None of our universities figures in the globally top 100 universities. Our research publications are abysmally poor. Our scientific spirit, our spirit of inquiry is pathetic. Our youth is engulfed in superstition, in blind faith. We take solace in the few illustrious global Indians, forgetting that they are largely citizens of America or Europe. To promote this spirit of inquiry and scientific temper, we at Spratt are setting up a house of reason. We call it Tarkic Sadan, with very, very little support and meager resources. Here is the link for Tarkic Sadan and what we do. We will very much appreciate your joining hands with us to promote scientific temper throughout the nation. Returning to the resolution of the dispute, let's be practical. We are talking about 20 crore Muslims, virtually every fifth or sixth Indian. Then there are close to 55 Muslim majority nations in which sizable Hindu populations reside. We have trade ties with them, we purchase oil from them. Whatever happens to Muslims of India may have international ramifications. Then there are Western democracies with heightened sensitivity towards human rights violations. United Nations and its affiliates take note of what happens to minorities globally. We can't run a company of 50 employees who are demotivated. With 20 crore disconnected Indians, it's well nigh impossible to build a productive nation. There is also a religious question. Whose Mandir? Maryada Purushottam's Mandir. Maryada. Shall we build this Mandir with fair or foul means? Would it become a security fortress, always threatened by some mad lunatic Kasab? Or would it become an abode of love for all? It's clear, therefore, that a permanent resolution can only emerge from a fair deal that involves give and take, dignity for all the parties concerned. Let us use the same religion that divided us to unite us. Let us pay heed to the Mahants of Hanumangadi and Nirmohi Akhada. In conclusion, may I remind that this resolution can only take one of the two forms. A. Let's wait for the verdict of the highest temple of justice, the Supreme Court. After all, it's a title suit. This is the Supreme Court of India, manned by proud Hindu judges in the majority, are trained in jurisprudence to deliver a fair judgment. And Muslims have, after all, committed to accept and abide by this verdict. Alternatively, we resolve this dispute through negotiations, fair and dignified. Let there be a winning formula. Win-win, not win-lose nor lose-win. Here then are the broader contours of the solution I propose. Let us set up two brand new trusts, one of the Hindus and other of the Muslims, keeping all politicians and vested interests away. Let us then pass new laws or enabling legislations, setting up a non-discriminatory commission or a commission of equal opportunities, a law prescribing stringent punishment for all forms of mob violence, particularly in the name of religion, and a law accepting the implementation of the Ranganath Mishra Commission's recommendations as affirmative action for the amelioration of the condition of the Muslims of India who have been grievously harmed due to this crisis. The disputed site is then handed over to the Hindu Trust to set up a majestic Ram temple precisely at that place. Simultaneously, another piece of land is allotted to the Muslim Trust to build a grand Babri Masjid about a kilometer away from the Ram Mandir. I have attempted to explain the background and the processes through 3 videos, for which this is the link. Soliciting your support, I have also drafted and presented an e-petition on change.org. Here is the link. Kindly examine it carefully, and if you approve of it, not only please do sign it, but circulate it so widely as to make it a national campaign to restore communal peace and refocus human development and true nation building. The links I have referred to in this video are also included in the description below and on the screens that follow. If you find this attempt sincere, kindly subscribe to our channel and support us by liking and sharing this video. Thank you very much for your valued time.